So, hello guys. Welcome to the second tutorial that I'm doing on YouTube ever. Like, I think I did one 7 years ago. And yeah, I'm doing that because a few people asked me on how to create this pixel art diorama that I uploaded on YouTube a few weeks ago. And yeah, I uploaded a time-lapse video, so that's not really perfect to follow along. So yeah, I thought I would do a tutorial, and I will be splitting that up into the tree, the grass, the wind effects, and also the DaVinci process on how to create this pixel art look without actually using and making pixel art in Blender, because I'm very lazy and I don't want to draw individual pixels for textures. Yeah. So I will be showing the scene in Blender really quick. So as you can see, it's not actually pixel art, it's basically just a Toon shaded Blender scene. And yeah, we will be creating that one from scratch. So let's start with that. So I opened up a new Blender scene to start the tutorial, and my normal workflow normally starts with gathering references of what I'm about to create. And I also did that for the scene that you saw earlier. For that, I just basically went on Pinterest and searched for some nice Toon stylized shaded scenes. And I gathered some references for the layout and some for the plants that could be growing here and there. And yeah, I suggest that you do the same because everything gets better with references. Always work from references. I think that's like one of the #1 rules if you create 3D art. And yeah, all right. So with my references up here, I will now be starting to create the tree. Let me focus on that here a little bit. Okay, so after I gather references, I am creating a small block out, which means basically I'm really quickly blocking out the things I want to create. And I will be doing the same now. So this is going to be the ground, like that part here. And now I'll be modeling the tree trunk. And for that, I'll be using the skin modifier, which is really handy to create branches. Let me move one vertex into the middle. I basically just created a plane, removed 3 vertices, and now the last vertex will be will be using the skin modifier, and that creates this box around it. And now, if you go into edit mode, you can just extrude the whole thing upwards a few times maybe. You can also like really look at the references and see how the branches grow there and the trunk. So yeah, if you want to stick to the reference that much, but of course you can stray away from it a little bit. And yeah, so I can just model out a tree. With Control A, sorry, you can scale down the radius of the branch you're working on. That comes in pretty handy as branches normally get smaller the further they're up on the tree. And the tree trunk obviously is a little bit bigger at the bottom. And yeah, so I'm working my way up to the very top of the tree. Also, a little trick I'm using is the proportional editing mode. If that's activated, you can actually press Control A and with the mouse wheel increase the size of the proportional editing. And if you then scale down the radius, it influences the other vertices. Okay, so before I continue modeling, I will actually check if that works the way I want to. Also, if you have those splits going on in the geometry, like where one vertex has two edges, then there can be problems like that. Normally, it just helps if you use Control A and scale around stuff, or if you use Control R and add a loop cut and move that one a little bit to the side. Yeah, that should be fine. Also, that one right now looks pretty low poly, and to fix that, I'm using a subdivision surface modifier, and that one should lie underneath the skin modifier, so the skin modifier gets applied first and then the subdivision surface modifier kicks in. And yeah, that looks a little bit better, and I think I didn't even increase the number here for the final tree. I will just shade the whole thing smooth. Okay, I guess I'll be moving on to the tree crowns now. And as we are still kind of blocking out stuff, I will first just use a subdivided cube. With Control 2 you can add a subdivision surface modifier to the selected mesh and put it to the level 2. And yeah, just looking at the references, I try to quickly catch the overall shape. Yeah, maybe something like that. Let me just shade that smooth. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with the whole thing, how it is laid out right now. So I'll be moving on to modeling the actual tree crowns now. Okay, so now that we got our base layout of the tree down, it's time to create some leaf meshes. And I will be drawing a texture atlas for that, because everything that is related to foliage, like the trees, the leaves and bushes and grass, I'm planning to have each of those on a texture atlas. And yeah, I'm creating that one at Photoshop. And let's just start with the leaves. I'm having my graphics tablet connected so I can draw a little bit easier, but you can also draw with your mouse, I guess. I'm actually planning to draw individual branches and not single leaves. So what I'm doing is I will just draw myself a little branch, something that could like spawn from the base mesh we just created, maybe something like that, and maybe another one, maybe something like this, yeah. And from that the actual leaves will grow. Let me just scale that up a little bit because I think we have enough space on the texture atlas. Then it's time to draw the leaves, but I'm searching for a little bit of a different color. Maybe something like that. Yeah, I think that's better. Yeah, I think we'll also add some dead or dry leaves. So yeah, it's fine if some are floating, because now if we have our first branch down, what I actually want to do, I will be removing the brown part, because I only want the green to shine through, because here you can also see there isn't really a branch showing on the leaves. There's only like the tree and then only a cluster of leaves, and I'm going for that look, so I will be removing those branches later on. They're basically just for orientation purposes. Maybe not as dense as the other one, so we have a little bit more variety. Yeah, I think that's fine already. Okay. So that will be our branch texture for our particle system. Now we also have the base, and for the base we need a tileable texture, or something that can like texture this sphere. And for a little explanation, I'm planning to use this approach here that the Airborne game uses, which basically is a base mesh and some leaves scattered around it, so it looks like a fluffy sphere. Yeah, we just created the textures for the little leaves meshes, and now we need to create texture for the base. After that we will do some normal editing to get a little bit more of a fluffy look, like here, because that looks pretty harsh shading wise. So let's move back to the texture and create a tileable. It probably doesn't even need to be tileable, just because the leaves will be scattered all around the base mesh, so there won't be much of the base mesh showing through later in the process. A proper texture will still be needed, and I think we can actually be lazy for that and just copy over maybe this branch here. I'm just duplicating those leaves. I will merge the layers, and then I will just delete everything that's bigger than our original square. And that actually could already work. I see some very dense spots here and there, but I think that's not a problem, just because it's the base mesh and not the leaves that are above it. Save that here as a texture. I'll be calling it Texture Atlas. So now it's time to import the Texture Atlas. I'm using the Images as Planes add-on. And if you look in the material view, we can see our texture. And now I will be cutting out the branches we just created. And I'm not just using squares and stuff. I will be cutting them out in a way that they have proper topology, basically like a branch would grow. When you remember the branch I drew in the original thing, it basically looked somewhat like this. And my plan is to do the same in Blender, but when I'm cutting out the mesh, I will be cutting out a bounding box that should look somewhat like this, and then it will get some edge loops that follow the topology of how the branches would grow. I'm using the knife tool to cut out the planes. This should be the first plane, and now I will be adding some loop cuts. Maybe something like that should be fine. Same for the other one. We don't need the rest of the plane, so I'm deleting that. Okay, I think that should be fine. Now I will set the origin to the 3D cursor. I'm left clicking here to set the 3D cursor to this part of the mesh. I don't know, maybe it's right click on your end. I'm using a little bit of a different setup. Now that should already be pretty much ready for scattering. One thing I want to do is, right now the planes are literally planes, and to get rid of this planey look, you can use proportional editing to modify the mesh, maybe somewhat like this, just so we have a little bit more going on. Same for this one. And then I will shade that whole thing smooth. Same here. Okay, and then we have our branches. Let me rename those things. All right, I will create a new collection with, yeah, I will call it leaves, and I will be adding a particle system to one of those spheres. I think I will be working with that one just to test everything and see how it works. And after that I can just duplicate it around. So let's create a particle system and set it to hair, and at the render tab, the render as path, we will change that to collection and lose our leaves collection. I have to check is what's the actual collection. Yeah, these two. I tried that before, that's why there are multiple collections already. Okay, now they're super small, so I'm scaling them up to a size that is reasonable for a branch, and we can reduce the number a bit. And we want to pick random, so it doesn't pick the same mesh out of the collection every time. So right now that looks kind of weird. And we can improve the looks a little bit with the scale randomness, and under the advanced tab, the rotation tab. Yeah, we will randomize the rotation a little bit. I'm literally just playing around with the settings because, yeah, I don't get every setting. Still, after multiple years of using Blender, it's kind of a Pandora's box, particle system settings. Just randomly rotating the stuff. Maybe increase the numbers again. So we got, yeah, maybe something like that. Alright, so I think it's time to texture the base, because that is just a white blob and we need a proper texture for that. Tree crown base. So in the shading tab, we will be adding a image texture connected to the base color, and I will be using our texture atlas that we just created as an input, and we want to use its alpha channel. That's why we saved it as a PNG, so it has an alpha channel. We have to set the blend mode and the material settings to alpha clip, because otherwise we will have those black spots here, because normally there would be alpha, but as we use it in opaque mode, there's just black. We have to set it to alpha clip to work. And now another thing we have to do is modify its UV coordinates. I'm literally just using a smart UV unwrap. Cube projection is a better way. Yeah, that's much better. I'm using cube projection, I think, because then we can just move everything into one place, and I think that works actually pretty nice. Yeah, the seams that are apparent here, yeah, they are pretty much gone because our particle system is above it, so what we have right now is more than enough. Let's move on to the shading, because right now the shading here looks somewhat like here, pretty harsh, and I want to improve it a little bit, and that can be a little bit tricky in Blender, so we have to do some yeah, playing around with some settings. First of all, I will make the instances of the particle system real. No, wait, before we do that, actually make a safe copy of the mesh you just did. Just, you know, just we have to go back or want to change some stuff later on and duplicate it around for the other tree crown stuff. Yeah, I'm a fan of saving some meshes here and there. Okay, now we can make the instances real and remove the original particle system by hitting the X button while hovering over the node, over the button thingy. And yeah, now our instances are all real meshes. But one thing we have to do is we have to make each of them a single user, because right now they are basically instances of one another. So if I edit one of those, you can see the instances also change, and we don't want that, because if we join everything together and they are instances, that will create a huge cluster of leaves. So what we have to do is select everything and do a make single user operation with object and data. You can also, here you can see where you find it, objects, relations, and make single user object and data. All right, now we can, you can just select one of those as a active one and press Ctrl J to join everything, and now we have our huge blob. One thing I'm not a fan of right now is that I think I joined the base thingy with them. Yeah, let's deselect that by holding Control and clicking 2 times on this mesh. So we have our base and the leaves separated. And do this thing again. Join. And now we have it like that. Okay. Now, so we can edit the normals, you have to use the auto smooth function in Blender. And then we will add a data transfer modifier. And by looking at this tutorial here, I can see that we will steal the normals from the base mesh and try to put it onto the branches. Now in Maya you can use, or I think it's really as Max, you can use the normal thief add-on. Blender has its own stuff here that works. Sometimes it works pretty well, sometimes it works not as well. We can just, we'll just have to try out. We will be using the tree crown here as a source mesh. And already something happened, because the normals instantly change. So right now you can see the normals of this whole thing are all over the place. Literally just the normals that those things here have, just scattered around. And if we use the custom normals, you can choose between different settings. Here it uses the nearest corner and the best matching normal. So it looks at the base tree crown mesh, here are the normals, and tries to copy those normals to those parts of the other mesh. If I apply it, you can see the mesh already looks much cleaner. The normals look much cleaner and much more spherical. And that's what we want. And yet now it's just a matter of trying out different settings. Maybe there's something that looks a little bit better. I think maybe I'm even going with that one that looks even flatter than that one. Yeah, I think I will go with that one. And then I will just apply the data transfer modifier. And now we have much cleaner normals compared to those over here. Let's check with the sun lamp. And I will turn on contact shadows because it looks a little bit better. All right, I think I'm pretty happy with what I have right now. Let me check the alpha settings. I think I want alpha clip. Yeah, I will be using alpha clip because alpha blend has some sorting issues here and there. You can see some of the planes are in front even though they should be in the back and stuff like that. I will be using alpha clip. Let's move on to the other crowns. I will literally do the same thing for the other ones here. But to save some time, I will actually just copy around what I have already. Wait, yeah. Okay, never mind. I forgot to join those into one because the base and those are still separated. So now you can duplicate it around. Maybe something like that. Now, maybe to break up the silhouette a bit, you actually could select some of those leaves, like like that, and just scale them up just a little bit. So you have some branches poking out here and there. I think that helps sometimes with the silhouette breakup. Yeah, I think I like that. Okay. Then I think we are already done with the modeling of those leaves. Now the shading part begins. Alright, so for the shading, we will be using one node in particular, which is called the shader to RGB node. And there's actually a tutorial which I just followed to create that look. And that is called Easy Toon Shader by Blender Secrets. And he does those 1-minute tutorials. And yeah, he literally shows how the whole shader setup works with the shader to RGB and the colorant node, and we will be using that setup. So let's go into the shading tab. We already have our small setup over here. I will be creating a shader to RGB node. And the shader input uses the principal shader, and the color should be going into a color ramp. And right now everything is black and white, which is to be expected because we only have black and white colors here. And now it's time again to look at the references, especially at that one here, because I'm trying to recreate that kind of look where the shadows are kind of a darker greenish, already moving into a blue color, and the brighter ones are more like a warm green. So the shadow is supposed to be that part here. And I think I will be just using 3 steps. By clicking control, like holding control and clicking, you can add some points. And to remove one of them, just select it and press the minus button. And now let's fix the alpha issue. We need to create a mix shader. And we need a transparent node. So basically we are mixing the shader to RGB node and the color ramp with a transparent shader, and for the factor we are using the alpha from our texture, and that should fix our issue. Okay, now it's inverted. Is it enough if I just do that? Yeah, I think it is. Okay. Now it's just a matter of playing around with some settings, and yeah, just find some cool looks. And this shader setup here actually is basically the base for everything that we will be doing in the future. So also our base mesh needs this kind of text, this kind of look. And what I just did is I went into edit mode, selected everything by pressing A, and then assigning our current material, because the tricon has its own material applied, and I don't need that. We only want the texture atlas material. So we can just remove that one, and then it should be fixed. And now the shading also looks much more coherent, right? Because here you can still see that there are different materials, and you can just remove one of those, and then it automatically uses the one that's left. Let's just do that for each of them. Okay, so we're already getting somewhere. You can also play around with the strength of the sun. That can also influence how the tree looks, right? But I think I'm already pretty happy with the results. You can also, in theory, just use a hue, saturation, and value node and put that in between the color ramp and the mix shader to get some more, yeah, just to test around which color could work. Another thing that I will be doing is I will put an emission shader between the color ramp and the mix shader. Basically what that does is it creates an unlit version of what I have right now. And with that I can control the shadows a little bit better. I will just have a little quick look at the contact shadows again, because I'm still unsure if I really want them. Maybe it even looks better without contact shadows. I think I will be leaving it off for now and just see how far I can go without them. Also, what I wanted to do is I will be playing around with the clip threshold, because as you can see, if you zoom out, the leaves disappear. You can counteract it a bit with the clip threshold. So playing around with the clip threshold can fix that issue a little bit. And now we can move on to the tree trunk. I will be doing it completely procedural in the node graph here. Okay, so first of all, let's copy over everything we did in the material for the tree crown, because as I said, that's basically our base for everything that we want to do. Let's remove the texture because we don't need that. And already you can see it kind of does the same thing it does for the leaves, but I want a little bit of a different look on the trunk. First of all, let's make the shadows a little bit more brownish. All right. And another thing that I want to do is I want to break up those edges a little bit, because normally, you know, if you look at the references on the tree, you can see there is a little bit of stuff going on, like different moss and some cavities and all of that. And I want to fake that a little bit by adding a Musgrave texture. And another color ramp where we can plug that in. Let's change that from linear to constant again. Basically, I don't know, green brownish value, and some green for the moss. I will be moving that through an emission shader again, and then mix it with another mix shader. You can actually just duplicate that one with Shift D. And now you can change the scale of the Musgrave texture. Something like that, a little bit more detail. Again, just try to find something that looks like you want it to look. Maybe I will use a different color as a base, maybe the same as that one. Maybe something like that, just to get a little bit of detail going on. And I think that already looks pretty cool. What you again can do to maybe change the colors a little bit is use a hue, saturation, and value node between our after our color ramp and between our emission shader, just to see where that leads us. You can do the same here. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. Another thing that I want to add is some wind effects to the leaves, and the way I'm going to do it is I will be using a displacement modifier and turn the strength down for now. And let's create a new displacement texture. Hop into the texture tab and use a cloud texture. And I think the normal cloud texture could already be enough. just scale that a little bit up. So, and now create an empty, and this empty basically will act as our wind, and the coordinates of the texture will be using the empty as an object. And now every time I use the empty and move it around, you can see that the noise on the leaves changes, because the texture basically scrolls over the mesh. And now you can animate the empty and use that as your wind effect. And that's what I will be doing now. I will give it a keyframe at my first frame and at the very last. Maybe just, I don't know, something like that. And now I will be selecting both of those keyframes by pressing A in the timeline, press T, and then I'm putting the interpolation mode to linear. Because right now, as you can see, when I started the animation, the thing eases into the animation. It gets faster, and then when it gets to the end, it eases out. It gets slower and slower until it stops, but I want it to be a constant speed. So I'm pressing T here and changing it to linear. And now it's a constant speed from A to B. And now we got some cool wind effect on our leaves. And if you want to decrease the strength, you can do that by changing the value here to something smaller, maybe 0.6. And the wind speed itself you can control either by decreasing the speed of the empty or scaling the noise texture. If you scale it upwards, it gets faster. And if you make it like bigger, you can make it smaller. I want a calm scene, so I'm using that here. I will be copying over what I just did to the other tree crown meshes. And that I will be doing like this. I will select all the other tree crown meshes and then select the one that has the modifier applied as the last one. And then press Ctrl L, which opens this link tab, and you can here copy the modifiers over to the other selected meshes, and now everyone has this wind effect. And right now I'm seeing, I think I can scale that up here again because it is a little bit too small. It just can't hold up to the other ones in terms of leaf size. The leaves seem too small in comparison to the other ones. So I'm scaling that up a bit again. Maybe move that up a little bit to get this nice empty area here, some negative space basically. Okay, so now we have a wind effect on our leaves. Now, in my original video, I also created a little tree sway effect. So basically the tree just did some kind of wind motion like this. And I also want to add that to this tree. For that, I will be applying the skin and the subdivision modifier on my tree branch. And to add this effect, I will be using a simple deform. Yeah, and I will set that to bend, and you can choose the axis in which you want to have it to bend. I will be using the x-axis because my camera will be somewhere like here. I just added a camera and matched the frame, and I changed the resolution to a square ratio just because I think that looks cool. As you can see, I will be bending the tree. You can do that by adding keyframes to this value here. So basically you can make it start at, I don't know, -3 maybe -3.5. Add a keyframe by hitting I while hovering over the angle value. Then move forward, maybe to frame, I don't know, 40, or let's make it 60 so it's not super fast. And then I'm just removing the minus so it goes into the other direction. And now we have a little swaying motion going on. And then I'm literally just copying this keyframe by Control C, by selecting it with my right mouse, and then Control C, and then copying it over to the next value, and then doing the same until I'm at the very end. Something like that. And I created a marker by accident. Let's remove that by hitting X. And now there should be a nice bending motion going on. Maybe that's even a little bit too strong, but I will leave it like that for now. Right now only the tree trunk is moving, but we also want, of course, the leaves to follow. So what I will be doing is I will be joining the tree crown with the trunk by selecting everything and then selecting the trunk as the very last object and then hitting Ctrl J. But now we have a problem. First of all, we lost our displace modifier that we used on the leaves, and we want that, of course, to work again. So what I will be doing is I will duplicate a tree cone here, do what I did before, and then add a new displacement modifier over here and just use our texture that we used here. There's a bunch of textures here at my end because I'm using different brushes when I'm sculpting, but that's not of importance for you. And yeah, I'll just copy over the different settings. I think I can delete that out. So the problem we have now is that also the branch gets the displacement modifier, as you can see here. It moves weirdly, and we don't want it. We don't want that, of course. So what I will be doing is I will be creating a vertex group for only the leaves, and basically that's acting as a mask. So only everything that is inside the vertex group will get the displacement modifier. And the way I'm doing that is I will be selecting my tree trunk by hitting L while hovering over it, and then hitting Control I to invert the selection. And then I will create a new vertex group and assign it to this group. Call it leaves. And now, if we use the selected vertex group here, you can see our trunk won't be moving anymore because we removed it from the vertex group. But our leaves will still get their little wind bending going on. Maybe a little bit more strength could look better actually. And I think I will reduce the bending a little bit. Maybe not 3.5, but like 2.5. I think that's actually enough. Yeah, I think I like that more. Now it should be fine. I can orient my camera again. And yeah, I guess that's the tree. The only thing that I still want to add would be the falling leaves effect that I already had in the old one. As you can see here, there are some leaves falling. And for that, I will be creating another particle system. I will be using a sphere. Just putting that maybe somewhere here. And I will be giving that an emission, like an emitter particle system. Change maybe the number to 100 for now. And for that I need some single leaf meshes, which is why I will be using another images as planes thingy. our texture again. That is interesting. Why did the shading change? That's weird. Okay, never mind then. I will use a normal plane just to get around this weird effect. Yeah, and I will be applying the texture as atlas material to the normal plane and just cut out some of the leaves here. I don't think we need more than one leaf actually, so we'll be just choosing that one here maybe. Pressing P to separate the selection and delete everything else. And we will be setting the origin to the 3D cursor again. And that should be our leaf. For the particle system, here in the render tab now, we will choose object instead of halo. And in the instance object tab, we will select our leaf, which I will be renaming now into leaf. Now there should be some leaves already falling down. Okay, they're super tiny. And they are weirdly rotated. Let's see what I can do here. I want some random rotation going on again, but I need to find out how that works. I think that should be fine, but right now they are way too fast. And to fix that, I will actually reduce the gravity here, just to see what works better. Maybe even smaller. Maybe like super slow. Normally I would do it a little bit different, but as we don't need any gravity for other physics simulations, I think that's fine. And yeah, I think that's a speed that is okay. I will increase the lifetime to 250 just so the particles live longer than our animation. And I will make a frame start of -10. So basically the leaves already are falling, started to fall here. Maybe even more. -50. And let's choose random as a distribution. And another thing I want to do is I want to make them look like they are blowing in the wind from that direction. So what I will be using is a force field. That blows in this direction here. Maybe let's scale them a little bit bigger again. Yeah, maybe something like that. And now, so we don't see our emitter in the final render, we have to hide it. And that should be under the render tab. And the show emitter button should fix that. Let me just render that out really quick. Yeah, emitter is not showing. And I think we can cache the simulation, just so we don't have to re-render it every time we go back to frame 0. All right, I think that's actually it. We have our tree with some nice wind effects, and this will be the end of this tutorial. And in the next one I will be showing how I did the grass, which is not super different to the tree, shading wise at least. And yeah, thank you for watching. I will be doing another quick tutorial now for the DaVinci Resolve process. So because right now we still have our Toon scene and we want the pixel art look, I will be showing how that will work in DaVinci Resolve. So yeah, stick around for the next tutorials and see you. Bye bye.